Good day, everyone. Our topic for today is about the nature of microbial cells. In this lesson, you will learn the basic nature of microbial cells with a focus on prokaryotic cells. Their evolution from the last universal common ancestor will also be discussed. Furthermore, this lesson also tackles the different properties as well as the morphology of bacterial cells. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to define a cell, describe the properties of cellular life, and describe the bacterial size and shape. Now, for the motivation question, let me ask you this. Do microorganisms differ in cell structure? So I hope you'll be able to answer that one as we go along with our discussion for today. The cell is regarded as the unit structure of all living things. It is regarded as the basic and the smallest unit of living matter. So I know that you have already taken this one up during your Earth and Life Science course during your senior high. Now, the cell was first described by Robert Hooke, and Robert Hooke was even the one who coined the term cell uh, because of his investigations. They're using a thin slice of cork. Cork is a material from plants which are made up mostly of dead plant cells. And so he was able to coin the term cell because he was referring to the empty chambers that he saw under the microscope, because plant cells, when they die, they lose all their genetic or all their cellular components, leaving only traces of the cell wall. And so he was able to see empty compartments, and so he referred to them as the cells. Now, the universally accepted definition of a cell is postulated in the cell theory. And this theory states that all organisms are composed of one or more cells. We always emphasize the phrase one or more cells because there are organisms that are just composed of single cells. We call them unicellular organisms. And there are also organisms that are multicellular. Another statement is that the cells are the fundamental building blocks of life. We know that in order for it to make up a multicellular organism, you need the building block are the cells. And of course, the third statement, the cells arise from pre-existing cells. So life begets life. At least our modern idea of the production of cells. Now, the present types of cells evolved from the last universal common ancestor, or the LUCA. As proposed by Wolfram Zillig, the present cellular forms on Earth have evolved from the last universal common ancestor, the LUCA, otherwise known as the progenotes. The LUCA is the very first true cell, a single-celled organism that is believed to be the origin of all life on Earth. Now, how does the basic types of cells evolve? So, from the progenotes or the LUCA, which were separated spatially, so they were separated in space. Each of these separated progenotes underwent several distinct evolution, and so this is maybe because of the differences in environmental conditions to where they have been placed. So others evolved and became the pre-Archean, others evolved and became the pre-bacterial. But sometime in the history of the Earth, a pre-Archean and a pre-bacterium has fused, forming a pre-eukaryote. This pre-eukaryote later on evolved and became the true eukaryotic cells, which later on evolved and became the cells of the plants, the animals, the protists, and the fungi. However, those pre-Archean that did not fuse with the pre-bacterium evolved and later on became the cells of the archaea. While those pre-bacterium evolved and became the cells of the bacteria. Both the bacterial and archaeal cells are prokaryotic cells, while the result of the fusion of the pre-bacterium and the pre-archaean has evolved and later on became the true eukaryotic cells. And so that's how the basic type of cells, the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, evolved from the last universal common ancestor. So how do we differentiate prokaryotic cell from eukaryotic cell? So we know in the past that the main difference is the presence of the nucleus. So both of them have their genetic material, but in eukaryotic cell, the genetic material is enclosed by a nuclear membrane, we call it the envelope, so that it is distinct from the rest of the cellular material. So it has its own nucleus or true nucleus or a distinct nucleus, whereas the genetic material of prokaryotic cell are found in a particular region of the prokaryotic cell known as the nucleus. Now, eukaryotic cell will be taught much detail when you go to your cell and molecular biology courses. But for our lesson in microbiology, we will focus on prokaryotic cells because majority of the microorganisms are actually prokaryotic cells. So unlike the eukaryotic cell, the prokaryotic cell's DNA is not enclosed within a membrane and is usually a single circularly arranged chromosome. Although there are species of bacteria with two chromosomes, but these are very rare. No, majority of the prokaryotic cells have singular, circularly arranged chromosome. Their DNA is also not associated with histones, unlike eukaryotic cells. They also lack membrane-enclosed organelles, unlike the mitochondrion and the chloroplast, which are membrane-bound. These are the organelles of eukaryotic cells. But in prokaryotic cells, their organelles are not membrane-bound. Their cell walls also almost always contain the complex polysaccharide known as the peptidoglycan. So when we talk about cell walls later on, we will try to understand the composition of peptidoglycan. And when they reproduce, they usually divide by binary fission. So during this process, the DNA is copied and the cell splits into two cells. So binary fission involves fewer structures and processes than eukaryotic cell. So if we compare binary fission to that of the eukaryotic type of cell division, it is more closely related to mitosis. Now, being single-celled organism, there are several properties that are exhibited by these different microorganisms. Now, some of these properties are common to all type of cells, that you can even see even in eukaryotic or higher forms of organisms. But there are those properties that are unique only to certain type of cells. So these properties common to all cells are compartmentalization and metabolism. The formation of the organelles. These are an example of compartmentalization process, and also metabolism, the production of energy. Photosynthesis, these are metabolic reactions. All of the cells are capable of growth. So they may be in different forms. So like in other organisms, growth is regarded as increase in the size of the cell, but mostly in microorganisms, growth is through increase in the number of cells. So we will be talking also about microbial growth in the later modules. And evolution. So cells contain genetic materials that are able to drive evolution in different type of cells. So if these are the properties that are common to all cells, there are also properties that are unique to some cells. Now you can only find them in some type of cells. Example, motility. Not all cells are capable of movement. Differentiation. Not all cells are capable of differentiating. So microorganisms are capable of differentiation. And communication. So many cells, they communicate by production of some compounds. So when in your cell molecular biology in your later course, you'll talk about cell communication. So in this type of communication wherein some other microorganisms may inhibit the growth of other microorganisms by producing chemicals that will kill them or that will inhibit their growth. So these are some of the properties that are just unique to certain type of cells. Now bacteria, as a representative of all microbial groups, bacteria come in a great many sizes and shapes. So most bacteria, they range from 0.2 to 2 micrometers in diameter and from 2 to micrometers in length to 8 micrometers in length. Now they have few basic shapes. So they could be coccus, bacillus, or spiral. So the coccus, the plural form is cocci. It means berries. Now they are spherically shaped cells. Others are rod-shaped. So if you're familiar with mga batteries, these are rod-shaped batteries. So bacillus, referring to rod-shaped bacterial cells, plural is bacilli. It means little stops. And the third type is spiral. Okay, so these are the basic type of cells: coccus or cocci, bacillus or bacilli, and spiral-shaped cells. Now, cocci are usually round, but they can also be oval, elongated, or flattened on one side. When cocci divide to reproduce, the cells can remain attached to one another. Okay? So, cocci that remain in pairs, pinagduha, after dividing, are called diplococci. Now, those that divide and remain attached in chain-like patterns are called streptococci, chain-like patterns. Now, those that divide in two planes and remain in groups of 4 are known as tetrads. While those that divide in 3 planes and remain attached in cube-like groups of 8 are called sarcinae. Finally, those that divide in multiple planes and form grape-like clusters or broad sheets are called staphylococci. There is really no arrangement of cells. They form grape-like clusters, clusters of cells. Bacilli, on the other hand, divide only across their short axis, so there are fewer groupings of bacilli if you compare that of cocci. Most bacilli appear as single rods, so they are called single bacillus or single bacilli. Now others appear in pairs after division, so they are called diplobacilli. Those that occur in chains are called streptobacilli, and those that may look like oval but actually they are not, so they are called coccobacilli. There are organisms, you've said, that are spiral in nature. So they may have one or more twists, but they can never be straight. Bacteria that look like curved rods are called vibrious, and there are many of these in the marine environment actually. Others, called spirilla, have helical shape. They look like a corkscrew, and they're fairly rigid bodies, so they're not really flexible. Okay. Yet another group of spirals are helical and flexible, and they are called the spirosheets. Okay. So unlike spirilla, which is propeller-like external appendages called flagella to move, the spirosheets No, they move by means of eggshell filaments, which resemble flagella but are contained within a flexible external sheath. Now, some not very common types of shapes are star shaped, like the genus Stella, rectangular flat cells like the halophilic archaea of the genus Haloarchaeola, and some are triangular cells. So what determines cell shape? Okay? So the shape of a bacterium is determined by heredity. So genetically, most bacteria are monomorphic. Monomorphic meaning they maintain a single shape. However, a number of environmental conditions could alter the shape of the bacteria. If the shape is altered, then identification becomes difficult. Okay. Although there are also some bacteria, such as Corynebacterium, that are genetically pleomorphic. No, not monomorphic. They are pleomorphic. So what does pleomorphic means? Meaning the cells can have many shapes and not just one. Okay. So to summarize our lesson, this particular lesson, so it would be better for you to answer this question as a form of review. So what are these questions? What is a cell? What are the statements of the cell theory? What are the basic type of cells, and how do they differ from each other? How did the present type of cells evolve from the last universal common ancestor? What are the different properties of cellular life? What are the different shapes of microbial cells? Okay, so you should be able to understand this for you to fully grasp the key concept of this lesson. Now, if you have any question, feel free to contact me through my email, or you can key in your question in our Facebook Messenger group chat. So thank you very much, and see you again in our next lesson.